Here we are, the motivational interviewing core skills, and I'm Alasdair Cant. I work with individuals who've got stuck in some ways. My specialism is in motivational skills or motivational interviewing, where people have got stuck, particularly in the context of where there's maybe dependence, addiction, there may be mental health issues. I work with people above all. So that's just a little bit about myself. My background originally was education, and came into this arena kind of by chance, but very happily found myself working in a way that tried to get the best results for individuals and groups. I trained in this in the early 1990s. We'll say more about how this came about and how it's been adapted. But that's enough about me. So the objectives, just to get a practical understanding of the fundamentals of motivational interviewing in conversation, and then we'll learn how to use the framework of motivational interviewing effectively. If there's anything in, we'll get used to using the chat button, please. So if there is anything in particular that you want, then please don't hesitate to say, or as questions arise, just put in a question. I'll do my very best to give 10 minutes towards the end to attend to specific questions. And if need be, come back to you on some of those. Also, as we did on the last session, we'd be grateful if we can be fully present here. So if you're able to switch off potential distractions, I know that working virtually, there are more things that can distract us, such as emails coming in. If you're able to switch those off so that you can be as fully present as possible, that would be hugely appreciated. As well as that, part of what we're doing is working with the resources we have. With motivational interviewing, we try to work with the situation as we find it, not as we'd ideally like it to be. So we use whatever resources available to us. And this means working quite creatively at times, working out what's going to be helpful here. If you're able to activate your camera facility, again, I would really appreciate that. It just helps to maximize the humanity in the interaction as best we can. I do know for reasons of bandwidth, as happened previously, that may not be possible for everybody. That's understood. But if you're able to, it is a generosity one to another, because you can signal through non-verbal gesturing that you're listening to each other, and that just helps. It doesn't mean we've got to be nodding continuously, but it just does help to make it just easy. So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for getting here in good time, and we're going to just get going. Can I just check if there's just a few seconds silence? We will take that as silence of contentment. Okay. Otherwise, yes, I see a question. Go ahead. Just on Emma.
Yeah, I just want to give context of the session, if that's all right, in terms of the Northwest work. Yeah, thank you for joining, everyone. My name's Emma Ford, the Programme Director of the Northwest Safeguarding Partnership. We've invited Alasdair and the organisation here today as part of wider work we're doing in the Northwest, where we know that we've got kind of sign up and dedication to improving how we work with families and alongside them. So we know that kind of skills and motivational interviewing can really assist that. So just to frame it in the wider work of the Northwest, and what will pop in the chat in a minute is our website, where the recordings of these will land, and also the wider kind of narrative and detail of why we're doing these sessions and how it aims to support you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Emma. I do love a context and answering that fundamental question. Why are we here? It's that's fantastic. And again, thank you to you and Kirsty for all you've done. I'm often asked, what is the essential difference between motivational interviewing and other strengths-based approaches, such as coaching? And we try to answer this question. I try to answer this question as succinctly as I can. And one of the things that really has struck me over the years is that while there have been some changes in motivational interviewing to incorporate personal growth, the emphasis in motivational interviewing is working with change. So that is drawing out or eliciting the motivation that sits within every human being. And that is the particular skill and focus of motivational interviewing. While I may do a bit of that in coaching, it's not the core part of it. Usually the emphasis in coaching is on growth and development, as with some other approaches as well. The other thing is that generally, when I'm working in a coaching arena or other strengths-based ways of working, people want to be there. And that is by no means always the case when I'm using motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is a framework which is designed for where there may be discord, that is, something isn't sitting right between people, or there may be ambivalence. Now, I'm just going to mention about discord firstly. It used to be called resistance, and you can call it that, but there's a recognition, there's a slight inference. If someone's resistant, they are resistant to us. We're in the right place, they're in the wrong place. That's the sort of slight dynamic implication with the term resistance. Now, please, I'm not saying you can't use that. If you wish to, you can, because some of you who've done motivational interviewing in the past may recall the term rolling with resistance, going with the flow and so forth. But now we tend to use the term dancing with discord, and we will do that in a lot more detail when it comes to supportive challenge in session 4. So that is one of and then generally in coaching, people want to be there. Ambivalence is actually much more common in a way than discord, and that's where people they neither particularly want to change nor they don't. They're not attached to one way or another, and they will tend to say what they think we want to hear for a quiet life. And all of us do that at times, but nothing changes. So that is ambivalence. So that is what a distinctive, again, of what motivational interviewing is. And I say this right from the outset. It is why the core skills are absolutely critical in our early listening, because we will be working with people where there may be a perceived or actual power imbalance, where people expect to be judged, where there's a feeling of shame and all manner of things that can potentially work against the conversation. And our job is to work as creatively, proactively as we can into that space. I will be basing all of what I do on the 4th edition, which was published in 2023, of Motivational Interviewing, Helping People Change and Grow, by the founders of this framework, Professors William Miller and Stephen Rolnick. And you may notice, those who are familiar with this whole arena, what's shifted is that one of the changes is it is more concise, and there's a recognition that where possible, that we can be concise and say or do in a paragraph, in a sentence or two, what would otherwise take a paragraph, that can lift motivation, not least because meetings finish earlier. So we try to do that, but we recognize some people may think aloud a bit, and we don't want that to be too restrictive. As well as that, the 4th edition is in plain language, and we try to use plain language. So we're going to practice this in our groups when we come to look at what is empathy, positive regard, congruence, curiosity. How do we describe those for ourselves? Because that is the core skills that we're working on. Okay, then for those of you who just need a quick reminder, on the right-hand side, motivational interviewing for working with children and families. This is where you will find the evidence of the effectiveness of motivational interviewing and the limitations, and where we may be unwise to use this, such as with children under a certain age, where there may not be enough experience to be able to do the thinking. Okay, thanks very much, everyone, for your patience. Very shortly, we will go into groups. I'm now going to begin with the strengths-based tree, which is a metaphor to convey going into any conversation where we look first for what is strong rather than what is wrong. It doesn't mean we're ignoring what's wrong. It's simply that it's the order of things. We're looking for what's strong. And this will overlap with many strengths-based approaches. I use a metaphor because the roots of the tree are usually invisible, but they are absolutely critical for the tree to stand strong when things get difficult. That's the metaphor. So, and they represent the values of working in a strengths-based way, which again will overlap with other forms of counselling or solution-focused therapeutic interventions, aspects of signs of safety, and or restorative practice, trauma-informed working, so the list goes on. And it's only as we go up the trunk of the tree do we get, and the higher up do we get to the distinctives that's different to other approaches, such as the framework of OARs, open questions, affirmations, and then the techniques. But if the techniques are not sitting on a strong foundation of the values that we're looking at, the core skills, then those techniques can backfire. They can sound perfunctory, casual, sarcastic, patronizing, and so on. And that's why these core skills are critical. So we're going to look at that, and then we're going to go to the framework. So very shortly, we will go into our groups. We're going to consider empathy. This is a word that's used often, so often that it can sometimes lose meaning. And I wonder if you would just have a quick conversation. We'll have about a few minutes for this to work in our groups. I'm just setting up, and I'd like you to consider in a sentence or two, how would you describe empathy? Okay.
Yeah, we're back. Yeah, we're back.
Where we are. Got back in.
Welcome back, everybody. We are now in the main space. If you're able just to press your mute button, I think everyone's done that already. Thank you so much. Yeah, could you press mute? There's one or two that I can. That's fantastic. Thank you. I hope you had a nice little introduction there and a quick conversation about empathy. I certainly really enjoyed. We had a group of about 5 of us. And I'm just now going to go through this fairly swiftly. But as I said earlier, if there's anything that isn't clear or you really want to add, please don't hesitate to use the chat. You may wish to watch Brené Brown, B-R-E-N-E, Acute Brown's film clip about this. This is another way of describing it. For now, I'm just going to use this simple visual. Sympathy, in general, sympathy is when we feel sorry for someone. And it may happen, we are human beings, but generally in the nature of our work, that will not be helpful. And this is where supervision is very important, because when we feel sorry for someone, we will tend to be pulled into a drama more easily. And one of the things, the nature of our work is we will be invited into dramas. It's part of the work. And I don't mean that word drama in a trivial way. We all have our dramas. And our job is to skillfully say, not today, thank you. For the vast majority, there may be times where involvement has to be more in cases of emergency. That would be exceptional. Generally, we will stay out of the drama, but we will convey that we are making an effort. So empathy, as we had in our discussion, the expression that came out was to try to understand another. We give them space because we are making an effort. That little 3-letter word try is absolutely critical. We are conveying that we hear them, but what we don't do is we don't go too far in feeling sorry for them. And it's a great skill. So, for example, I will often have someone who will, especially in an early session, they'll say, this happened and that happened. I was thinking of a lad I was working with called Darren, and he described an injustice that he'd experienced, and the whoever the professionals were had done nothing, and so forth. And in my head, I was I was going, that's awful. That's dreadful. But that was in my head. What I've had to learn over the years is to connect with Darren. And I will say this in a particular phrase, but you will find your phrase. But I will say, Darren, that sounds really hard. Please tell me more. Darren, that seems difficult. It sounds. Do you hear a slight difference there? Rather than saying that's awful, I could say that sounds awful. That sounds hard. I'm saying, I'm hearing your story, but it is Darren's version. So in the last sequence, we looked out of the window and we had a view out of the window. That is our view. Somebody might look out of the same window and see something different. That is their view. And there will always be different views. So the word interview means literally to see across a situation. And by conveying to Darren that I am hearing what he's saying, recognizing the difficulty of what he's or awfulness of his situation, but without categorically saying that is awful. And the reason for that, if I'm too categorical, is that sadly what could be happening is Darren might be exaggerating, he might be minimizing somebody else's part in a story, or lying, or simply not having a victim perspective. All of these are things which we need to just be aware of. As in any conversation, it is a perspective, not the perspective. It's lovely that I was mentioning when I was working with my little group, and with a group of people, we were just having a little chat, and already you could feel the warmth of connection, even virtually. And that's because of the signals in body language. So the non-verbal gesturing is the smiling, the nodding, all of that, which where there is no verbals. But obviously that may not be possible on the phone, or where we can't activate cameras. But we try to use non-verbal gestures, yes, like nodding. Verbal gesturing is like, okay, go on. And that's going to be really important. So we're going to practice later on our reflections, because that helps us hold back and listen. Empathy, surprisingly, does not mean we have to say much. Conveying I am alongside, and it was a lovely expression in our group. Sorry, I can't remember. It was, but it was about holding the space for that person. We can convey I am here, because empathy is getting alongside rather than taking sides. Our job is not to take sides. Tempting as it might be, it is getting alongside, and that will include with children, because in getting alongside the family, that usually will be in the best interest of the children. There will always be exceptions to this, so I'm trying not to be categorical here, but these are general things. Hope that is clear. Can I ask, and feel free if you want to use the chat, any guesses why I put the word apathy there? And as Sarah said in the chat, sounds unsafe, uncaring, and so forth. But yes, what really came across, Deb, thank you, is just not making the effort. And the reason I put this in is not a criticism of anybody. This is from my own supervision in 2015, because I've been working in this arena for decades. Sometimes I'd be with a client in the context of addiction or something else, and I would say, oh, I know where we're going with this, or I would too quickly have worked out in my head where we should go, and not meaning to, I was becoming apathetic. So it can manifest in many different ways, and it's often because of pressure of time. It may be because we are not in the mood, we feel triggered. There's all sorts of things where, for whatever reason, as you say, we slightly switch off, and it conveys that we're not caring. So a very common phenomenon is something called passive listening. Passive listening is where we're there physically, but we're not there completely. We've sort of gone somewhere else, got distracted, and we that again can convey that we're not fully present. So thank you very much, everybody. That's a quick tour. Now, so we try to avoid sympathy, feeling sorry for someone to the extent we're likely to be pulled into the drama. We try to avoid apathy, where we are not making the effort, we switch off, we listen less, we prejudge. This is difficult because often there are many pressures in the system that work against really good listening. And empathy is to try to understand another person. We make the effort so the talker is aware that we're actively engaged, and it could be many phrases that convey we hear them. That seems, that sounds, I'm hearing, I'm picking up, I'm sensing, all of those things. So please, this must never be a formula. We don't want it to be over prescriptive, but also we signal in the body language and verbal gestures that we are getting alongside. Fantastic. We're going to go quite quickly now. So just hope till 15:15, and then we're going to move on to the framework of motivational interviewing using OARS. So back to the tree, and we have a term, positive regard, which again is a bit of jargon. And could somebody else either put in the mute, unmute and shout out as Deb did, or feel free to put in the chat. But this term, positive regard, any guesses what the word regard actually means? As in when you say kind regards at the end of an email or letter, if you use that phrase, what do you think regard is about? Just check the chat. Yeah, go ahead.
Is regard so regard is in relation from one person to another?
In relation,
as a starting point, that's what
lovely.
I thought.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. I love that, the relation. And notice Rachel's language, person to another. As with what Bev's put in, thank you, Bev, the acceptance and respect. Now, what is it acceptance of? Linking what Rachel said.
We've done, hi, it's Deb. We've done some positive regard training with Luke Mitchell,
yes.
He's fantastic. He's coming doing our inset day in September, and it's about being accepting, non-judgmental, finding out what the issue is before not jumping in with both feet, I suppose. But building a connection so that person feels comfortable and safe with you, and then you can deal with it. So he talks about be connection before correction, and be curious, not furious, first of all.
Yeah, brilliant. So we connect before we correct. Now, sorry, Kalhini, did you want to come in there? Oh, I thought you wanted to come.
Oh, hi. So yeah, sorry. It was just kind of to say what Joe said. It's about that communication with someone, that acceptance, that non-judgmental. So whatever that person has come with, it's working with that and not making a judgment or being biased about that. It's accepting that and working the best you can.
This is brilliant. Absolutely. Now, I get all the spirit of this. I'm really enjoying this. So I want to be crystal clear. There's a slight adjustment here, but please don't be put off by this. In motivational interviewing, we try, in being honest with ourselves, is we may have judgments, but we try to withhold them. And so but I get the spirit of what Deb's saying when saying non-judgmental, I get that. But the reality is someone walks into a room, we have judgments unconsciously, consciously. It's a sometimes matter of safety. Now, that said, which is why, as you rightly said as well, regard is respect for that person as a human being. It may be that we don't like the beliefs, which could be oppressive. We don't like their behaviors, which may be neglectful of children. But that person was or is somebody's child. It is something where it's a non-negotiable, and it is beautiful, and it is wonderful, and it is very challenging at times, because particularly, for example, I was at a hustings at the end of last week, a political hustings, and everybody had to be reminded, please, let's be respectful of each other as people, even though there are strident differences in opinion. And there were times where I had to really hold on to that, remembering that holding back, as you described there, Deb. So it's not to say I will make judgments about someone. I think sometimes language is oppressive and I'm not happy about something that's been said. So there is a judge, but I'm trying to convey that I'm withholding that judgment and being curious rather than take a position. Is everyone okay with this? Do you say if otherwise? This is, some of you will recognise Carl Rogers, 1959, The Conditions for Person-Centred Working. In Carl Rogers' draft, he used the term loving kindness. The publisher said it wasn't professional enough, and hence this term positive regard, which is fine. It's remembering that we are respectful of that person as a human being. So we work with that as a condition for person-centred working. But in family safeguarding, in the work of safeguarding, I think it's absolutely fine to get back to loving kindness. I was in Greece. This is based on ancient Greek philosophy, much of this. And when thinking of ancient Greeks, they had many words for love: agape, eros, and so forth. And I think professional love is absolutely fine. So what you described, Deb and Kilhini, sometimes actually working that out together. And Rachel, thank you for these contributions and for what people have said in the chat. How we convey that will be infinite and wonderful. You'd be fully yourself in being kind. So I was at a staff conference in Devon not long ago, and some of the young people who just left care were talking. One lad mentioned that the social worker dropped off a KFC, so Kentucky Fried Chicken, on his birthday. The social worker was in the room. She'd completely forgotten that it was something that meant the world to him, and that had been 2 years before. So kindness can come in many forms. Now, it doesn't mean we've got to be giving KFC. It may be often just before, for example, a child protection conference. There's a lot of thought about the layout of the room and the conversations before to make that person feel as comfortable as possible. So kindness comes in many, many different ways. And the question we have is, in the course of our work, how do we show positive regard? And this is where it gets tested. So we do not have to like everyone. So maybe some people we will struggle to like, and it's remembering they were or are somebody's child. And it's a beautiful universal thing. Okay. I'd like you to have another conversation, please. And this is about just where this gets tested. This is quite quick one. And how do you show kindness under pressure? How do you show kindness under pressure, or positive regard? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back. We're now in the main space again, and thanks for your patience with just the back and forth. We're trying to work swiftly, but I don't want this to be frustrating for you. So if there's anything that particularly you want to sort of say, then don't hesitate. You could just write it or add it in the chat. One of the expressions we've had in our little group, we talked about reflect the importance of conveying that we're giving somebody time, even if we've very little bit of time. It might just be with our body language. It's where we convey, I hear you, I see you, I get what you're trying to come with as best I can. So again, it links with making the effort. Positive regard can be hard. It is designed for where it's not necessarily easy. It'd be great if it were always easy to connect with people. So it's a very intentional showing kindness into a space where someone has a very different perspective, perhaps, to ours. And that's where we can make a huge difference, I would say, in all of this. So the term congruent is usually it's a counselling term. It's actually originally it's a mathematical term because it means aligned. And it was lovely in my first group we were talking about being attuned with somebody, and congruence is being attuned with yourself as well as that person there. So being attuned with yourself will involve, basically it is about being honest. So what the alignment is what's going on in our head with what comes out of our mouth. And this honesty is absolutely critical to the work of motivation interviewing, because it will involve being able to bring the problem that we're becoming aware of into the room as best we can. So we will be honest about that. And in the past, we were saying in session 1, where I know that I will have listened to people, and I was in the very early years of my career. I would convey that I was listening in my body language, but actually in my head, I was worried, and because if that person's going on and on, I might be thinking, will you shut up? We've only got 20 minutes, but I look as if I'm listening, but actually something's getting lost. So that's not being honest. And into that now comes instead a positive disruption, where I try to keep the focus of the conversation going. Being honest about what you're hearing as best you can, and being honest where you struggle to understand something, rather than bluffing, is going to be very important. Just as we are honest with each other in this space, and we don't bluff when someone just says, I don't understand this, or this isn't making sense. You can say that to me, rather than just going along with it and then saying afterwards, well, that didn't make sense. So we try to bring a problem in early, but it's always with kindness. That's why it's never good if somebody gives you feedback and you feel demolished, and they say to you, well, I'm just being honest with you. So something's got lost there, just as we wouldn't want to be honest with somebody without kindness. And that's where the way we send an email with a difficult message, we'll always think afterwards, is it kind? Yes, we're being honest, but are we being kind as well? So those two go wonderfully together. So please use the word whatever you prefer. Congruence simply means being real, being authentic, being honest, whatever term suits you, but this will be very helpful. For example, increasingly in the work I'm doing on anti-racist practice, and as a white man recognize that I have a shared responsibility here, and I'm doing this with Amrit Panesar, we're looking at how we use motivational interviewing to, for example, talk about anti-racist practice and do things that are, we feel, constructive rather than destructive. And what's happening sometimes that we're hearing from social workers and other professionals around the country is that racist terminology is being used at times where people think it's okay. It's become okay to say certain things. And there are times to just say, I feel hurt by what you've said. And just name it, that is your feelings. Because what's happening is people are trying to sometimes dehumanize and make people into sort of groups and say, oh, well, I don't understand them, therefore. And we try to ensure that we're humanizing every conversation, and just being honest about our feelings can sometimes humanize it. And when someone is, and I know it's very different from me, the kind of insults that I will get are going to be different to what others may get. It'll be always infinitely varied. But if somebody insults me, I will sometimes say, I feel hurt by that, or that upsets me. And they'll say, oh no, it's not you. It's just, and they're actually being rude about the organization, but I'm on the receiving end. Okay, but I say it is me. I am here. And that's why I've said that, because I'm working with you as a person, not just part of a system. And that's what I'm trying to convey. So we want, again, going back to thinking of, and I feel all of this weaves together in terms of conversations about race. I want to ensure that conversations don't get shut down too early for fear of giving offense, or because people think, oh, I shouldn't say this or that. Let's try with kindness, with curiosity, with empathy, go further in conversations, particularly where the outside arena is one that for some people feels less safe. I feel that is my job to share responsibility, to say, let's help to make this work. So this is how we try to make this work in practice. I've just tried to give one example that I've been working with recently. It was in Portsmouth on our anti-racist practice initiative. So I hope that's helpful of just how this can work in practice. Can I just check, does that make sense to everyone? Are we okay with it? Anyone want to add? Everyone happy with that? Lovely. Thank you. Occasional thumbs up just gives me, and I just cannot see the group at the moment because understandably they're on different slides. So thank you for bearing with me. Okay, in a moment we now go to, sorry, I'm just trying to come out of this slide. I was having slight issues here with my slide. There we go. I've got it. Sorry. I've just stopped sharing for a moment just to back to the group. And that takes us to the other thing I want to just mention is curiosity has been mentioned several times. It is neutral. And I think of it as being childlike. This is where, in the context of children and families, we learn from the children. They will ask what may seem sort of unusual questions or seemingly stupid questions. Actually, every question is so important. And that's what we want to wonder. Children wonder aloud and will ask questions like, why is the sky blue, or why is whatever? And that what we're trying to do here is stay childlike. That's different from childish. Now, one of the things that you will come across when it comes to supportive challenge is the extension of curiosity. And we'll be looking at the work of Louis Theroux, based on what's in motivational interviewing, it's called the Columbo style. Some of you may be familiar with the interviewer Louis Theroux. He uses exaggerated curiosity to stay in the space, to hold the space where things are controversial and difficult. And that is my job, to help us also stay in the job, to stay in the conversation. So this is where curiosity, because it is neutral, it allows us to ensure that we are alongside, not taking sides too quickly, even with what has been said has been very provocative. Can I just check, is everyone okay with that? Yeah, lovely. Don't worry if you don't know the work of Louis Theroux or Columbo. It goes back decades to a style of working. We will come to that in session 4. Okay. So I had a lovely conversation in the last group, and we're going to do some more skills practice in a moment, because we come to this, Maya Angelou, she's saying that what people hold on to is how they've been made to feel long after they forget the detail. So this is from her book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Maya Angelou was working as a black rights activist in a very hostile environment in America in the 1960s through to the 1980s. And this is a fundamental that we try to ensure in all our interactions. Never, ever do we humiliate or shame or lecture or talk at. All of that we try to avoid, because people will hold on to it negatively. That is not because they intend to, as was just a conversation a moment ago there, we were talking about, as a teacher, sometimes we will have experiences where the fight or flight mechanism kicks in, and for reasons of survival we have to hold on to something which is fundamental to us, and so it's not a choice, it's just how people will process an experience, and you hold on to how you've been made to feel. So that's why we try to ensure people are not ashamed. But the converse is true, and if we convey respect, empathy, then that will go a long way. And this is particularly in a semi-public environment such as a conference or a case conference. Okay, so we now move on. We've the tasks of MI, by using the core skills, we strengthen engagement. We ensure the focus is as best we can child-centered, but in a way that helps that person feel part of the conversation, with just exploring how to keep the conversation focused. And this focused can mean many things. It might be, what's this conversation about? Or it might trying to keep a conversation child focused. So there are many aspects in which we can use focus, but it helps people avoid being overwhelmed. That's what focus does, because in behavior change, the reason people very often don't get to the start line is it just feels too much. So that's why I say, which bit can we do here? This bit of the conversation. And in the next session on the cycle of change, this is going to be particularly relevant to the action stage, which I call the little and often stage. So focusing in lifts motivation away from being overwhelmed. But now we're going to go to the evoking, and the evoking is the drawing out whatever is sitting there for that person to harness change talk wherever we can. We're going to harness change talk. And in the past, there was a thing called sustain talk, where that's about the old behaviors. And what we're trying to do is not indulge that, but wherever possible, move towards change talk. And we do this by using the core skills of open questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. Okay, so we've now, what I'd like to do is start with simple reflections. And this is where you simply reflect back what you hear. So we'll do a quick practical exercise where I'd like you to listen to one of you talking and the other person listen by simply reflecting back some of the words you hear. I don't want you to ask questions. I don't want you to make an observation. Just reflect back the words you hear. You may get a chance to swap over. I'll just give you 4 minutes. Is everyone clear what the task is? Someone may observe. Enjoy this. Keep it light. And the topic can be what motivational interviewing means to you, or how you express empathy, or a challenge of showing kindness at times, if occasionally even our managers may not be the best version of themselves sometimes, and we may struggle to show kindness, or whatever it is that you can. So choose a topic. It's only going to take 2 minutes, so just keep it very simple, please. And then I'd like you simply to someone else to reflect back. So a simple reflection is echoing back the words you hear. We're not going to put interpretation in, the words you hear. Is everyone okay with that? Might be a phrase or two, and you convey that you're listening. Lovely. Thanks, everyone. Welcome back, everybody. I love the cacophony of noise as we join back in. But I'm sorry, I know it's all a bit clunky, but if you'd be so kind as to put your mute button on, please. Thank you. I run an accredited program of motivational interviewing, and what I notice is some of the more sophisticated skills are used, but often overlooked are the most simple things, and that is to let go and listen. You will hear this in the cycle of change, where someone is not wanting to engage, is not wanting to, it doesn't think there's a problem, for example, and our job is to temporarily let go of our agenda and stay with what's being said. And that's where reflections, I say they're deceptively simple because they do tend to get overlooked. So we had a lovely, I've just been working with Makina, Noor and Alexandria, and Makina talked about what, where she might use some of these skills. And she used one phrase 3 times. And that to me was, okay, I hear that, and I noticed that she said it 3 times. Just repeat that back, because that was a core part of what she was trying to convey. Okay, so it might be a word that's said several times. It may just be a phrase, okay, or just even the verbal gesturing it's all part of simply reflecting back, so to hear what you're saying, and then you can build that up. So then the reflection, and you'll see in the edition 4, reflection can then build up to how we'd reflect back, and then get into paraphrase, and then to get to what's called complex reflections, but we're not doing that now. Let's stay with simple reflections, okay? But they are very powerful, or can be. Thanks, everybody. I'll just check in the chat if there's anything I need to be aware of. One moment, thank you. Okay, thanks for letting me know, Jenna. That's a pleasure, thank you. Okay. You may want to scribble something down, even though this is recorded, because I'm going to go fairly swiftly through, but I'm going to talk about the most transformational aspects of my work over 30 years, the things that have really made a difference. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is affirmation. A starter for 10, any guesses in the chat? What is the difference between affirmation and praise? Any guesses? Affirmation and praise. Look. It's okay. That may be that may be quite a challenging question. So,
Hi, I
yes.
couldn't come off mute then. Oh, sorry. I didn't know if it was hands up or what. I couldn't find my thing.
Yeah, that's.
Am I okay to talk?
Go ahead, Norma.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
I was going to say affirmation. I think for me, is praise is when somebody's telling you something that they find good about you or that they like about you. And affirmation is when you're telling yourself about your good traits or the good things that you've done or where your strengths are. That's just my guess.
Yeah, no, well, it could be. It's actually praise is, and I think we've got it there. But you're very close to it, Norma. And thank you so much for because you're right. The way that it's used in general language is slightly different within motivational interviewing. So thank you. It is indeed, praise is about a specific thing that's done, and it's great that you turned up online. If affirmation is a quality that you notice in a person that allows them to manage to do that. So in spite of all the demands on you on a Monday morning, you demonstrate commitment. Rather than just say, thanks for being here, that's great, you're here, which is fine. Praise is okay, but it's short-lived. So you're absolutely right. Thank you for those as well in the chat, and to everyone, Norma and everyone, thank you for that. The affirmation is where you hear something in that person that you speak aloud, and it's and I think the word that's been used there is really helpful, a quality in that person. So this is where when somebody's quite rude to us, occasionally we might just say, do you know what, that's hard to hear, but there's a courage and honesty in saying that to my face, because some people might have said that behind my back. So an affirmation can be about someone's stubbornness, their courage, their honesty, when there's not an ideal going on. Anyone else? Sorry, I've just got to plug in. An affirmation, where else might affirmation be used? Any guesses? Sorry, it could be where affirmation is where what we're trying to do is build resource beyond the conversation. So if you know that you're not going to be there for long, and you want somebody you're hoping someone will attend a treatment session, you might just affirm that you notice that this matters to them and that they do love their child. And the fact that they've spoken they've been so vulnerable with you about the anxiety about not getting to that treatment session tells you something about their care. So I found this a really great way of building resource beyond the conversation. Does everyone get that? Because that helps people be resourceful for change. Do we just have an example of anyone who's done this recently? I'm sure you have, as we get affirmation.
Hi, yeah, this is Deb.
Yes, go ahead. Hi, Deb.
So we had a parent who came who was sharing their concerns for their child, or something had happened, and she said, I'm really sorry to bother you. And I said, no, you're not bothering me. This is about your child. You are showing your child that you care and you've got their back. So please don't say you're bothering me or that it's something small. It isn't small because you've come in and you want to share it. So, it's about backing that up, that you recognise that they're doing it for a reason.
Okay. So the crucial bit to the affirmation, because anyone using your active listening in a few words, what is it that Deb affirmed in that person?
How much she knew the mother. I'm sorry, I went to jump to mother, but how much the parent carer cared about the child.
That's it. You care. Brilliant. You care. Don't worry that you're bothering me. I'm hearing you care. Does everyone get that? I'm just sort of short-circuiting, because what we try to get with affirmation is we keep it really succinct. Now, actually, Deb, it was perfectly appropriate that you gave a little context there and said, please, you've said not bother, because that showed that you were listening to them. So the actual affirmation is that quality. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, others. Sorry, does someone else want to come in there? Is everyone clear on that? Please, could we practice this in the next few weeks? And this is where it links with finding treasure that often gets missed. Deb could easily have just said, oh no, don't worry about bothering me. That's okay. But she actually went something further and affirmed that quality. That's really lovely. So it's got a sort of slightly more eternal, it's something that people can take with them forever and beyond. Because if people get praised to say well done to have not shouted at your child or well done to have stopped smoking, or well done to, and that's great. But as soon as something does go wrong, they feel, oh, I've blown it, and all that praise counts for nothing. And actually, what you try to do is affirm people along the way about their tenacity and self-awareness and willingness and all the discipline, whatever it is that they have shown, that they have got some of that, but without over-egging it. It always must be authentic. We never make it cheesy. Okay. Thanks very much. If I was to ask the question, do you know what a closed question is? I get a nod. Okay, so that was a closed one. Yes, exactly. I just asked about it. So that's a closed question. And closed questions get a bad press, but they do have their place. Sometimes we need information quickly. There are other times where, in terms of neurodiversity, an open question may be too abstract. And so instead of saying, what strikes you about that, which might be too difficult for somebody to grasp, I would say, you've said such and such, do you mean this or that? Okay, so you make it more concrete. Okay, so that's where closed questions do have their place. And also in where there's limiting beliefs, where I say something like, that family will never change. Or I could never do that. There are times when you might say to me, Alasdair, do you believe that? Okay, this will come up in the supportive challenge. Forgive me, there'll be lots in the supportive challenge, but this is where, there is something really quite lovingly testing in motivational interviewing. We hold the space to interrupt the flow of thinking. Do you remember? If thinking doesn't happen, behavior doesn't change. And we want thinking to be, oh, I never thought of that. So I had this in when I was a student teacher. I thought I couldn't do names, and the deputy head said, Alasdair, do you believe that? And it was just a moment where I thought afresh about, I realised I'd become lazy. I was hiding in the belief that if I don't do names, I don't have to try. Which Eileen Parsons, 30 years ago, and I still remember her. She was a fabulous it's a professional example of positive regard. She believed that every child in that school had the right to belong, and therefore we make an attempt with names, which is why, forgive me where I've sometimes got a name wrong, I've wanted to try and get that right, because I try to make an effort. Okay, so now we go to open questions. And this time you can unmute when you wish to, or just write in the chat. How would you describe an open question?
Something that needs further clarification and a deeper understanding of what's going on, so it allows someone to kind of express with more detail. So.
An open question allows space for that open wondering. So there are lots of things that would, it's given somebody space to think about something, and it could be something else. So it's given them the opportunity to speak out loud.
Thank you. Oh, I'd love to carry this on. This is glorious, and thank you so much. So we're getting, honestly, this is, so what's happened here is really interesting. So who was the first? Lynn came in second. Who came in first there? I couldn't see.
Me, Makina.
Makina, sorry, Makina. It was Makina. Hi, Makina. Thank you. So we had, from Makina, we had 26 words. So in our word count alone, an open question is 26 times richer just in word count. Okay, and what we heard there from McKinney is it allows someone then to just put in the words they wish to, and as Lynn says, an open wondering. So there's lots, and I thank you for all you've put in the chat there, because really interesting about creating a safe space. So I'm not going to go through the detail now, because but I'm going to give you 3 quick tips. Are we up for that on our questioning? 3 tips to improve the power of our questioning. So the first thing is what we did there. I asked the question, how would you describe an open question? So how would you, that opens it up, and it could be describe what happened yesterday. Tell me more about. Okay, so these are all open questions. They invite the person to say more. There was 7 seconds before Makina started talking. What was happening in that 7 seconds?
Thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So that is the thinking. So what I was doing was something called mind the gap. In coaching, it's called holding back. And you put it in the chat about creating space. Call it what you like, but you give that space, because if thinking doesn't happen, behavior doesn't change. So in motivational interviewing, silence is golden. But I love, again, what you've put in the chat. Thank you so much, that it needs to be safe. We don't want it to become oppressive. And if there's a power imbalance, like I'm the facilitator and you're a participant, and if I allow that silence to go on and on and on, people think, what's happening here? Eh? Or has he frozen? Or, if it's online, so we use our people skills, but please allow space after a question. And say to the individual working with, then maybe just take a few seconds to think about that. So don't rush this, because that is the central plank of motivational interviewing, is the questions. We let them do the work. Okay. The other thing is where you can declutter your questions. So in other words, you take words out wherever possible. And the reason we do that is, if I just do a quick test for yourselves, I might ask you the question, why are short questions more effective than long questions? Pause. Okay, so that's the one question. Why are short questions more effective than long questions? Now, if I ask this in a different way, I might say, Why might it be that long questions, insofar as what they're trying to achieve, will be less effective than would be the same equivalent in a shorter version? Any thoughts?
It's more difficult to take that information in.
Yeah, and I see this smiles and think, where have they gone? But think of, it's interesting about job interviews, and sometimes when we're thinking aloud, they can be quite bewildering at times. And I think sometimes there's a little bit of hidden discrimination, not meaning to be. I'm not criticizing interview panels, but sometimes we benefit certain kinds of thinkers with those kind of very lengthy questions that we ask. So, and please share your favorite questions that you're having with other colleagues, because we need each other. And I've found in the last, so for example, the last 3 months, I've had clients, and they sometimes will say things that are quite kind of outlandish or sort of unexpected. And I might just say the words back and say, how does that sound to you? And I say it with a big smile and say, okay, I know that sounds stupid. Okay, that's your words, not mine. So we then have a better conversation. How does that? So that's a question that's worked for me. Or, what do you think I might be worried about here? Or what do you think we might be? So you find the questions that do the work, but keep them short, decluttered. Is everyone happy with that? And then finally, personalize them. Alasdair, what matters most here? Or what matters most, Alasdair? Because systems, processes can be depersonalizing. We want to convey humanity. And as that, I remember a deputy head from 30 years ago that said, Alasdair, do you believe that? And I never forgot the question, because I know she was conveying to me, I need more from you, and I believe in you. Somehow I heard a lot in that question. Now that's happened many times. It's not just that question, but the personalizing it, adding the person, and you can give someone a question to go away and think about, to tell the person the name. What kind of parent do you want to be, or how do you want your children to describe you in 10 years or whatever it is? Okay. So affirmations, questionings, and reflections. And then now I will do a concise summary, which is conveying the essence of what we've done. So a summary doesn't need to be all the detail. It will simply say, thank you for being in this conversation. We've looked at the core skills of motivational interviewing, how we use empathy, kindness, curiosity, and honesty, and thinking about that in our practice, and then into the framework where we employ open questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. And that is me summarizing all that we have done. Thank you for being here.